Hello, everyone. It's January 19th, 2022. We are talking about Parshat Yitro. Yitro, this class, an amazing Parsha, an important Parsha. I would say among the top 10 most important, the top 54 most important Parshiot of the Torah. Um, and by way of starting this Parsha and starting the discussion on what I'm going to focus on, which is Mount Sinai, the the first account here of standing at Mount Sinai, I would like everyone to do a mind purge, uh, to purge everything you know from either having read this, heard dozens of sermons, or watched a certain movie. uh,
Part of the Red Sea.
I'm referring to the Ten Commandments. Uh,
Oh,
Purge that from your mind because um, nothing that you have previously heard, in my opinion, and nothing that you have previously seen, uh, really uh, purports to represent exactly what's going on here. And exactly what's going on in the text is a bit of a puzzle, as usual. And I think, I think in the reading that I'm going to present to you today, very different from what you understand. And I'm at least hoping that by presenting a different reading of this, or an unconventional reading, or a reading that we may not be used to or may not be familiar with, that it will result in a new engagement with this text. And that, of course, is the desired result of study. Hearing something new, seeing something new. For my own uh, preparation research here, I'm making use of the work of Yoram Hazony, a philosopher of the Bible. He's a youngish philosopher. He has a book called The Philosophy of the Hebrew Bible, and he has a very important essay on Ma'amad Har Sinai, Torah from the Sinai, Torah from heaven. Um, and he's given a number of lectures on this, and which for me has been quite elucidating. For me, has made me rethink this passage. So we're going to look at this very carefully. I'm going to focus on the text itself, stripped away from the interpretations that we are familiar with, certainly, and try and ask at the very basic, like, what's going on here? And then ask, well, why is what is being told here being told, and what does that mean? So, with no further ado, let me go to the screen here. I'll share the screen in a second. And here we go. Share the screen. Boom. Boom. Okay. So, wrong screen. First, stop that. Sorry. We're going to first read the story, and then we will do the text. Here we go. On the third new moon, I put the Hebrew on the side here so that those who have more familiarity will kind of be able to read along. Uh, on the third new moon, after the Israelites had gone forth from the land of Egypt, on that very day, they entered the wilderness of Sinai. Having journeyed from Rephidim, they entered the wilderness of Sinai and encamped in the wilderness. Israel encamped there in front of the mountain. And Moses went up to God. The Lord called to him from the mountain, saying, Thus shall you say to the house of Jacob and declare to the children of Israel, You have seen what I did to the Egyptians, how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to me. Now then, if you will obey me faithfully and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all the peoples. Indeed, all the earth is mine, but you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the children of Israel. Moses came and summoned the elders of the people and put before them all that the Lord had commanded him. All the people answered as one, saying, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do. And Moses brought back the people's words to the Lord. And the Lord said to Moses, I will come to you in a thick cloud, in order that the people may hear when I speak with you, and so trust you ever after. Then Moses reported the people's words to the Lord. And the Lord said to Moses, go to the people and warn them to stay pure today and tomorrow. Let them wash their clothes. Let them be ready for the third day, for on the third day the Lord will come down in the sight of all the people on Mount Sinai. You shall set bounds for the people round about, saying, beware of going up the mountain or touching the border of it. Whoever touches the mountain shall be put to death. No hand shall touch him, but he shall be either stoned or shot. Beast or man, he shall not live. When the ram's horn sounds a long blast, they may go up on the mountain. Moses came down from the mountain to the people and warned the people to stay pure, and they washed their clothes. And he said to the people, be ready for the third day, do not go near a woman. And on the third day, as morning dawned, there was thunder and lightning and a dense cloud upon the mountain and a very loud blast of the horn. And all the people who were in the camp trembled. Moses led the people out of the camp toward God, and they took their places at the foot of the mountain. Now Mount Sinai was all in smoke, for the Lord had come down upon it in fire. The smoke rose like the smoke of a kiln, and the whole mountain trembled violently. The blare of the horn grew louder and louder. As Moses spoke, God answered him in thunder. The Lord came down upon Mount Sinai on the top of the mountain, and the Lord called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. The Lord said to Moses, go down, warn the people not to break through to the Lord to gaze, lest many of them perish. The priests also who come near to the Lord must stay pure, lest the Lord break out against them. But Moses said to the Lord, the people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for you warned us, saying, set bounds about the mountain and sanctify it. So the Lord said to him, go down and come back together with Aaron, but let not the priests or the people break through to come up to the Lord, lest he break out against them. And Moses went down to the people and spoke to them. God spoke all these words, saying, I, the Lord, am your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods besides me. You shall not make for yourself a sculptured image or any likeness, what is in the heavens above or on the earth below, in the waters under the sea. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord, your God, am an impassioned God, visiting the guilt of the parents upon the children, upon the third and fourth generations of those who reject me, but showing kindness to the 1,000th generation of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not swear falsely by the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not clear one who swears falsely by his name. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. You shall not do any work, you, your son or daughter, male or female slave, your cattle, or the stranger who is within your settlements. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth and the sea and all that is in them, and he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor your father and your mother, that you may long endure on the land that the Lord is assigning you. You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, you shall not covet your neighbor's house, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or his female slave, or his ox, or his ass, or anything that is your neighbor's. All the people witnessed the thunder and lightning, the blare of the horn, and the mountain smoking, and when the people saw it, they fell back and stood at a distance. You speak to us, they said to Moses, and we will obey. But let not God speak to us, lest we die. Moses answered the people, be not afraid, for God has come only in order to test you, and in order that the fear of him may be ever with you, so that you do not go astray. So the people remained at a distance, while Moses approached the thick cloud where God was. The Lord said to Moses, thus shall you say to the Israelites, you yourselves saw that I spoke to you from the very heavens. With me, therefore, you shall not make any gods of silver, nor shall you make for yourselves any gods of gold. Make for me an altar of earth, and sacrifice on it your burnt offerings, and your sacrifices of well-being, your sheep and your oxen. In every place where I cause my name to be mentioned, I will come to you and bless you. And if you make for me an altar of stones, do not build it of hewn stones, for by wielding your tool upon them, you have profaned them. Do not ascend my altar by steps, that your nakedness may not be exposed upon it. So I read that in its entirety for one purpose alone, which was, of course, to remind everyone, of what we call erroneously, and I'm going to say this over and over again, we ought not call Aseret HaDibrot the 10 Commandments. So from now on, let's call it the 10 statements or the 10 precepts, because that's what they are. They are statements, and the word command is not there. The word statements is there, and for we are understanding that these 10 statements form really the foundation of the relationship. So I read the story to try and illustrate that I think it's very different from what is in almost every one of our perceptions. That something else is going on here, rather than the cinematic presentation that we have all become familiar with, and to one extent, we want to simply uh, um, acknowledge the great feat of representing this in such a way, and also simultaneously the damage that that presentation has done to, I think, a thorough examination of the text. At the very least, it's a puzzle, it's complicated, and we really, really have to look deeply into it. I'll stop here and get just reactions first. Lilana, I think you had a reaction, or no? No? Okay, so yeah, Susie, go ahead.
Yeah. So, whose translation is that?
So I'm using the Sefaria translation. I'm using, for this is basically out of utility. It's not a translation that is precise by any means. It's probably the JPS translation.
Because
Yeah, because there are a lot of problems with it.
yeah, Kiddush Tem is not purify yourselves.
No, of course not. And I as I read it, I'm going like, nah, it's wrong. Okay, we'll go through it as best we can and fix up these
Yeah.
kinds of things.
The other thing is, a good number of years ago, Rabbi Joseph Lieberman from Pardes came to Highland Park.
Okay.
Actually, more than once, I think. And he went over this particular section, and he was. I remember he was saying that, similar to what you were saying, it's not what you think of, and that
Yeah.
you have a lot of Moshe, running up and down the mountain.
Well, that's pretty clear. There's a lot of going up and down the mountain.
Yeah.
So on that charge, as we begin to approach this, let's define the zones here and understand that. Maybe before I get into the text, we'll just understand the zones and just present a certain schemata here. And there's like an obvious kind of question, which is why is God meeting on a mountain, and why not anywhere else? And is a mountain only a geographic and topographical space, or is it a metaphorical space as well? And so here, this is where we're going to take just a little pinky toe step outside of the text and go into the allegory here, and that is to say that the mountain, while the Torah represents the mountain, as a space in this world, it's a space in this world, and that the object of that space is a meeting. The object of this whole story is the meeting between God and a people, okay? And the meeting between God and a people takes place at a specific location, which is a mountain. A mountain, Marlene, I see you, is three dimensions. There's a top, there's a middle, and there's a bottom. Let's, for basic, illustration. There's the foot of the mountain, there's the slope on the mountain, and there's a summit on the mountain. Okay? Now, it's not a high reach. It's not a, sorry, the pun. It's not a big leap to understand, I guess, a universal thing, which is that we look up, right? And that there are different experiences on the summit than there are at the base. The summit of the mountain allows you to see far. The base does not allow you to see very far. Knowledge of God allows you to see beyond the expanse of what is normally capable of being seen and apprehended. And not everybody is capable of that. So the Torah is quite unabashed here in its hierarchical presentation of reality. There's a singular individual, Moses, who, because of lots of interesting character traits and personality endowments, has been the one to be selected to be on the top of the mountain. The people do not have that capability, and they are at the bottom of the mountain. Later on, and we'll see this probably next week in Mishpatim, you have the presence of the elders, but the elders are present here now. And the elders function in some way as an intermediary between the singular leader and the people. The people is it's essentially an undifferentiated mass. The elders are an echelon of leadership between the people and Moses, but Moses is really the leader, endowed with whatever capabilities, characteristics, and skills to be able to be the one to go up the mountain. That's what the mountain is. Now later on, when we get to the book of Yitro, and you've heard me speak about this. We talk a lot about zones. That there are the Beit HaMikdash and the sanctuary really consists of different zones, and that there is the zone, the outer zone, and the more inner zones. The inner zone, the innermost zone, is the Holy of Holies, and then the secondary zone is the courts, and then the outer zones are the assembly places. Meaning that in some way the temple and the sanctuary corresponds to the architecture at Sinai, the scheme of Sinai. That there's a Holy of Holies. In 2 dimensions, it's the center. In 3 dimensions, it's the top of the mountain, and then there's the people. Now, what you saw there, just by preliminary, is that there's the setting of boundaries. The setting of boundaries is crucial, and we'll go into that shortly. Okay, Marlene, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
It also presupposes some knowledge of sacrifices and other buildings that the people are going to have when it hasn't been described to them yet.
So all of that, it's a very interesting point as to what do the people know in terms of their cultic life. That would be the term, right? My assumption, reading the text, many of us assume that people are people and they do stuff, right? Yeah, at the very least, you have a life cycle. Everybody celebrates a life cycle somewhere. I mean, I doubt that they did it the way obviously we do, but people have an instinctive way of interacting with things beyond them. And let's not forget, they were in Egypt, and they may have also had Egyptian influence over the course of several centuries. Susie, go ahead.
So Moshe has met God on this mountain before,
Yes,
and in the future, Eliyahu will.
yes,
And it's also, I think, a symbol of immanence and transcendence, because the mountain is attached to the earth. It's like it has a base that's down here, but then there's the what's up there, which is removed from the earth that you walk on, under normal circumstances, and we think of God as being out there somewhere, as opposed to necessary, but you have, as I said, immanence and transcendence.
Yeah. So the mountain, as I said, is an actual thing. It's a place of this world. It's Bob is here. We got a geologist here. We could go into the geology of mountains and the mountain regions and why mountains happen. We kind of know that it's the smashing of the Earth's tectonic plates and all that. But I'm pretty sure Moses wasn't aware of plate tectonics. But the mountains are things that really make for discovery, and also the experience of the summit is one that I think most human beings can relate to, that you can see for miles and miles and miles, and that makes for transcendence and immanence as well. But the mountain is also the place where heaven and earth, I mean, to borrow the rabbinic phrase, it's where heaven and earth touch, right? And that is the driving metaphor here, and the driving, it's the frame of this whole story, which is there is God, and God has this deep, sincere desire to break through to humanity. God is beyond all reality. God is beyond all experience. God is unfathomable. And God, because of God's desire for this, wants to break through and has figured out that the best way to do this is to select an exceptional individual and make that experience of disclosure one that at least is somewhat possible. It's fraught with danger, though. Let's go into the text, and we'll see how this works. Okay? So, we got this. B'chodesh hashlishi, in the third month, letzet b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim, b'yom hazeh ba'u mibar Sinai. So, we are now, the text, literature is giving us the temporal setting. Third month, what's the third month? Nisan Iyar Sivan. It's the third month. Okay? And we are saying Bayom Hazeh on this day, so that probably means on the first day of the third month, meaning it's 3 months since they left Sinai. Why 3 months? I'm not really sure. But what this does as a text is it puts us into we're the storytelling mode, which is I have a time and a place. And this is once upon a time, namely third month, and desert, okay, wilderness of Sinai. And this kind of forces the reader for a moment to kind of reflect, well, where have we been? Well, look what we've had. Look what we've done in the last 3 months. We've gone out of Egypt. We've split the Red Sea. We've had a few complaints for Moses. We have the manna. We have the quail. We have do we have the quail? We've had a war already. It's been 3 months. I would think if you could just blink and think back 3 months ago. So today's what? January 19th, December 19th, November 19th, October 19th. Where were we October 19th? I think we were just about finishing Simchas Torah, right? And thinking about where have we been in the last 3 months? Well, it's easy to think, because we haven't gone anywhere. We're all kind of in a suspended state. Okay, so 3 months is a temporal thing. Marlene, go ahead.
if it's the third month, they left on the 15th of the month of
It should
Nisan.
be yeah. So
So the third new moon has to be 1 month later, unless you're counting backwards.
So I'm counting it the way that I think that it's being told here. Notwithstanding that that's a good question. I want to kind of get into it, but that's I'm saying it just in general terms. This is we're being told something of a for a setting, a place, and a time. Okay, but it's a good point. Vayisume refidim, vayavomi bar Sinai, vaychanu bamibar, vayichan sham Yisrael neged ahar. So again, we're getting a bit of a reiteration here, and telling us in a little more specific detail where they came from. They came from Refidim. They came to the wilderness of Sinai. They, plural, encamped in the desert. They, singular, Israel, singular, was next to the mountain. And this is really important. What's really important is we're establishing in our imagination, in our minds, as readers here, listening or listeners to this, there is a large mass of people. They've gotten up, they've moved, and they've set up camp. They've set up camp in their temporary habitations, whatever those were, tents, sukkot, whatever, mostly probably, temporary hut dwellings of some sort, okay? So the picture is they are neged hahar. They are next to the mountain. What does next to the mountain mean? They're probably on flat land next to the mountain, somewhere. So our imagination is that they're not camped on a steep slope. They're obviously camped, on something that's more or less flat. The mountain is in the distance. This is the point. Well, how distant is the mountain? Moses is going to go up to the mountain. So the people are camped, right? They're in their tents. And Moses now goes up to God, okay? Because he knows that God is on the mountain, all right? He knows that this is where they are supposed to be. He knows that they are to be at the place of meeting, and that has been already disclosed to him prior. Moses goes up, Allah Ela Elohim, and the assumption is he's going up the mountain to God. Vayikra elav Hashem minahar, and God is calling to him from the mountain. So we have the picture of he's going up and God. So the question is, and here permit me for anthropomorphism, permit a little anthropomorphism, okay? And the Bible certainly doesn't want to present God as a physical being, but it's going to make it easy to teach this if we are saying that there's something, okay? So where is quote unquote, God right now, okay? So God is on the mountain, from the mountain, near the mountain. It's not clear. So that's why I put the question there, is God on the mountain yet? It's like he's going up, and we're getting a picture that God is coming down. So I don't want to give you this, kind of orbit kind of image, but God, there's the essence of God, divine presence, whatever you want to call it. It's not on the mountain yet. It's somewhere near the mountain. And that is what is calling to Moses. Vayikra elav Hashem minahar. Lemor, and now we're getting this as I'm calling this the pre-covenant, okay? This amazing statement. Ko tomar levet Yaakov v'taged livnei Yisrael. This is what God is saying to Moses. Thus shall you say to the house of Jacob and speak to the children of Israel. Okay, we could spend some time talking about the poetics of this. We get it. Beit Yaakov, Bnei Yisrael, two kinds of facets of the same thing, amplifications of the idea of who this people is, the house of Jacob, the children of Israel. But God is saying, this is what you're going to be saying, and this message is going to be delivered to, we're going to see the elders. Atem ritem asher asiti limitzrayim. You have seen what I did to Egypt. Va'esa etchem al kanfei nisharim. I lifted you up on the wings of eagles. Va'avi etchem elai. And I brought you to me. This is the point of the whole Exodus. I did this to Egypt. You saw what I did to Egypt. I did that. You saw it. I brought you on eagle's wings. What I say is stunningly poetic. Yes, it's an amazing metaphor. What was the purpose? I brought you to be with me. I want it, and here there's I'm going to intone this with intimacy. I want you to be with me. The purpose of the Exodus was your liberation, of course, but it's to be with you. I want you to be with me, right? Ve'ata, and now, im shamoa tishmu b'kuli, if you listen to my voice, ushemartem et briti, and you keep my covenant, v'item li skula mikol ha'amim, ki li kol ha'aretz. You will be my treasured possession, because the earth is mine. Here is an idea. This is an idea. This is now a complicated idea, because in this verse here, compressed in this pre-covenant preliminary, is really the essence of the whole deal. Listen to my voice, keep my covenant. If you do, you will be my treasured possession. It's conditional. Being my treasure is conditional upon keeping the covenant. And singling you out as my treasured possession is my prerogative. I can do whatever I want. The earth is mine. God is saying, I am exerting total freedom. I am being totally God here. I can do whatever I want. And if I want to select a group in this, among the human beings in this world, I can. I'm doing this here on the condition that you listen to me. So I'm making your treasuredness conditional on your acceptance of the covenant, because the earth is mine. And what is the position that you'll have? Atem tiyuli mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh. You will be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Ela advarim asher tedaber al bnei Yisrael. And these are the things that you tell them. So this is a very small, short speech. This is it. I mean, when I gave my little speech about what's the mission of the Jewish people, I said, be a blessing, be holy, choose life. But in a way, I could give an alternate speech and say, this is it. Listen to God, keep the covenant, and in so doing, you will be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. And what does it mean to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation? Well, it means to have a posture. It means to have a mission. What is the place of priests in a nation? The way, and of course, this is slightly anachronistic because we don't have the fullest development of an idea of priesthood. So we have a kind of intuitive understanding that there's something called a priesthood. There are people who are acting as Kohanim in the people already before officially being Kohanim. Okay, so we'll kind of set that little technical problem aside, and we'll say that there's an understanding that Kohanim function in a number of ways. Kohanim are facilitators. Kohanim are the people who are agents. Kohanim have agency. And most importantly, as far as ancient Israel is concerned, Kohanim are teachers. Kohanim are teachers.
Teachers.
Oh.
Teachers.
Yeah,
And
teachers.
the function of Israel in the world is to be a kingdom that is the agent and the teacher of the world. And what specifically are they to teach? God. They are to teach the presence of God. They are to teach that there is something called God. They are to teach that that something called God has implications in terms of how a human being is to live. That's a simple message, but it's obviously a very complicated message. So, because it's a complicated message, Moses, and it's also here that there is a relationship that is taking place here, that God is establishing the relationship. Teachers are a part of the world and apart from the world. You are differentiated, but you are also part of. Okay? Any question? I didn't see a hand there, or did I? Right. Go ahead, Lana.
Okay, so this is an agreement, like in Hebrew, chozeh,
Yes.
an agreement between two sides. But I wonder, how did the children of Israel how did they understand the meaning of it? Because it does not have too many details. An agreement, I know agreement about teaching, about renting an apartment. What did they agreed so fast with that? I don't know if they understood what they said, what they signed for.
It's such a great question because we read this and
What did they agree to?
the words kind of they're familiar to us, but
The detail.
if you are part of the scene, you're saying, well, what did he just say? What does this mean? What does this mean? And there are certain assumptions here, right? And let's not forget that there. I want to say, we are in a shul, and we deal with the acoustics, right? We're dealing with the acoustics, and how do people hear you talk? How do people discern? Do people have the same faculties of just hearing in terms of what the content? What did he say? What did he say? And there's the discernment of the language, and there's also the decoding of the language. All of that is part of this, and I think this is really, really important. That what we're saying is that the people may not at this moment understand what is being said to them, and that is a real fact of this moment. And we could make all sorts of analogies to this. Imagine, the metaphor of marriage is always used with the moment of meeting. It's a marriage at Mount Sinai between God and Israel, and I suspect that most people who are getting married when they're young, they get married, they have not a clue as to what that means. They may have some indication, they may have some yearning and some inclination and some kind of understanding, but they really don't have a clue of what it means. Okay. And that's more and more true the younger and younger the people are, right? And certainly in antiquity, when people were put together without having known each other, they had no clue of what it is. And then, certainly 20, 30, 40, 50 years into a marriage, some people still have no clue what it is. Okay. All right. It's all about relationship. And so, as you said, look, when you form a bond or a union or an agreement, a rental agreement or a business agreement, the covenants of the agreement make certain stipulations that you assume that people understand, right? I mean, you do this daily, when you get a piece of software or when you get a piece of, a computer, you have to click all sorts of things. They're Megillahs, entire scrolls of agreements that nobody reads. Like, I'm afraid to click it because it might say, by clicking this, inside clause 4 of this says that you surrender your bank account statements, and we can have access to your social security number, and we can at any moment, take all the information that you have, and we didn't read all of that, and every single person here has done that because, why do I have to read this? Okay. So here, this idea is compressed into 3 verses. Okay. And it is the basic content. It's the preliminary, I want to say it's the preliminary articles of the covenant, but it's oral and it's given in such a compressed and compact way. And it's what God says to Moses to tell the people. Okay. Let's keep that in mind and we'll go on.
What
So,
the people?
the people.
Challenge the people.
All right, I'm going to go. So, what does Moses do? Vayavo Moshe, vayikra leziknei ha'am, vayasem lifnehem et kol hadvarim ha'el asher tzivahu Adonai. What does Moses do? He says, he goes down, vayavo Moshe, so he's gone up and he's gone down. And he calls over the elders, okay? And he places what God just said, lifnehem. Vayasem lifnehem is very unusual way of reflecting about talking. And it's saying that the words have a certain kind of concrete reality to them. And he places it to the elders. And this, I think, amplifies the question, which is the content of the message is complicated. And in order to mediate the complicated message, he needs assistance. By the way, at the beginning of the Parasha, he's already been schooled by Yitro that in order to judge people, you can't do it yourself. You need intermediaries. So Moses, I guess, is employing or deploying the elders as a way of intermediary, and the elders will play that central role certainly later on in the story as a way of teaching the people, okay? Now, notice from verse 7, where Moses is speaking to the elders, in verse 8, the people, Vayanu chol ha'am yachtav, the people themselves answer. Now, this prompts a certain debate among commentators. One comment, Yoram Azoni says, it can't be the people here that respond. It's the elders that are responding. So I think I disagree with him. I think aham is aham, but he makes a compelling point that Moses is deploying the elders, and here the elders are giving a preliminary response, okay? Or you may say that Moses is deploying the elders then communicate this to the people, and the people then answer, Kol asher diber Hashem na'aseh. Everything that God said, we will do. In other words, he says, listen to my voice, keep my covenant. We pledge that we will do that. That's it, okay? So it basically what is going on here is, you want this? You want to be treasured people? Listen to my voice, keep my covenant. And they say, okay, we want it, all right? And that's what's going on here. That's the preliminary covenant. Then it gets complicated. So Moses now goes back to God. So he's going up to God again. And he delivers this to God, this information. So you would say, well, wait a minute. Why does he need to go back? If the people say na'aseh, why does he need to tell them? And so my answer is because the Torah is really trying to say that there's, this going up and down the mountain is essential to the story, and that God is not present in the community yet. We have this idea that, we go to shul, we can daven, or we can go to our living room, or we can go to anywhere I'm seated right here. I have God right with me. Okay, God, how are you? I'm fine. Good. That kind of thing. But there's the geography and the zones make it that Moses has to continue the process of differentiation to go back up. And I have content, I have information that I need to relay back to God. Okay? To review, the people are at the mountain, Moses went up, Moses went down, and now Moses went up again. So we are on the second tree, ascent. And God says to Moses, Moses is going up, and God is meeting him again. And God is saying, Hine anochi ba'elecha. I'm coming to you. I'm coming closer to you. And we as the readers, listeners of the story, we're getting the sense that there's a climax coming, that the meeting is going to result in some kind of climactic, encounter. I'm coming to you. I'm not there yet. I'm coming to you ba'avanan, in a thick cloud. Why is God coming to Moses in a thick cloud?
Don't answer it.
Why is God coming to Moses in a thick cloud? Because the idea of apprehending God is not available even to Moses, right? Thickness is not clarity, right? And we have read the rest of the Torah, so we know that God appears in a cloud, and God appears in a cloud in the Holy of Holies also. You don't get pure vision. And this is, I think, an idea that is embedded in this whole moment, which is you can never perfectly apprehend God. One can never attain perfect clarity. Even Moses, who is presented here in the most excellent manner possible, he cannot obtain this. He wants this, as we will see later on. He tremendously wants to know God's essence, but God will not show him his essence, okay? And God is going to appear to him first in a thick cloud, because that's what God does. You cannot apprehend God with clarity, yet, at least. So he's saying, I'm coming to you, ba'avanan, in a thick cloud, ba'avur yishma ha'am b'dabri imach, so that the people will listen as I talk to you. The people will listen to our conversation. The people is privy to our conversation, even though I am not talking directly to them yet, or maybe I won't. So here, the picture that's emerging is God's coming down. I'm coming down to you in a cloud. I'm going to talk to you, and they're going to listen as I talk to you. I'm going to talk to you because you're Moses. The content of Revelation then is God speaking to Moses and the people hearing that. Why? Because the people are not capable of hearing God with the same capability as Moses. And they need to have trust in a human person. And that's what's going on. It's the Gam Bechayam Dinu Olam. I need them to trust you. And the implication of this is, I am not going to be on your dial-up modem. I am not going to be accessible to you whenever you want. I'm giving you this moment, and they're going to trust you because you have this. And I'm differentiated from them, but you are the bridge between me and them. And here, Moses, this is when Moses actually says to God, this is what they said. They said, Na'aseh. Okay? So Moses is going up to bring the information of what the people say to God. God says, I am making what I'm going to say to you in the cloud. I am going to tell you this. They're going to hear this. And Moses says, that's the moment that Moses says that they're in. Na'aseh means thumbs up. Let's go. So now God says to Moses, Lech el ha'am. Go back down. V'kidashtam. And I'm translating here, sanctifying. You're right, Susie. It's not purify them. Kidashtam. Hayom u'machar. Kidashtam means separate them, make them distinct, make them understand that they are now in a sanctified temporal and spatial zone. Do that today and tomorrow. So you need to have something to do to make them in a zone of specialness and sanctification today and tomorrow. It's going to take that amount of time. It's a big people. V'chibsu simlotam, and launder their clothes. I love this detail. It's such a great little detail. So why do we have the laundering of clothes? And I'm offering a very simple answer, which is they haven't had a bath. They haven't been to the laundromat for 3 months, and that this is sacred.
I haven't been to the laundromat.
Okay, they haven't had a chance to launder their clothing for 3 months. They're filthy, right? And that what we're getting here is that the specialness of this moment requires a physical sense of distance and a kind of intentionality that this is the only time that this is going to take place. And so it's like we would say, you got to put on your best clothes for this, right? And clothing obviously has that significance. And the clothing, of course, they've gone out with Egypt. And there's an assumption here, I'm assuming, that there's water. There's water around the mountain to wash your clothes in, okay? And that it's going to take time to wash your clothes and dry your clothes, probably a day, okay? So the idea is that there's a physical preparation necessary for this moment of encounter. And that, I think, is very, very, very significant. Obviously, it's going to be echoed in how everyone relates to the sacred. You don't come to the temple without going to the mikveh. You don't come to the temple wearing your ragged clothes. I mean, to this day, we don't come, we shouldn't enter a synagogue without a certain kind of respect that is, displayed by clothing. Alana, go ahead.
So I think this physical preparation is actually connected to the spiritual preparation.
Yes.
Also, Moshe going up and down, how close is he really get spirit, not physically, but how ready is he to be close to God, to understand this procedure, and also the washing clothes and purifying, not only physically, but are they really ready to be the nation of this God?
So they're not. I'm going to say right away, they're absolutely not ready. They're going to do all the things they do, and Moses, of course, has intuitively understood that this is what's required. But it's clear that they're not. Skip, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Rabbi, let me take you off on a tangent.
No, but take me. Go ahead.
No, wait a minute. Is this from the human perspective? No one talks about God's perspective.
Yeah.
And everybody, all other nations, according to history, turn God down.
Yes. Okay.
Now, was God in a crunch that I have to do something that allows these people to come into my zone?
So the answer is yes. The idea that frames this whole story is that God has a relationship with the ancestors of his people, and that for that reason God has taken.
But that's only because they said yes.
Yes, that's right. And so God,
and no one else said yes.
So what you're relating to is a rabbinic midrash that God kind of peddled the Torah to the rest of the people. We're just going to set that aside for a moment. Okay, it works theologically for me for lots of different reasons. It's not here in the text. What's here in the text is, God has brought them out of Egypt, and we're getting ready for the moment that God is going to speak, right? And that requires a certain level of preparation, which includes clothing, okay, and includes everything. Go ahead, Marlene. Yeah.
Does Kiddush Tem, if you're being separated, was that taking out the Erev Rav? Was it only the children of Israel who were allowed to do this?
I don't know, and my assumption here is that what is happening here is happening to the entire. They're one group, okay. It's the people is not differentiated in its subunits. Now the people is a people.
Except said about Jacob and Yisrael, so that he already has the two aspects of this group.
Right. So I'm gonna use the poetic license thing here, and that says that basically what he's saying here is, I'm trying to emphasize to you, it's for all the people, the descendants, who are manifested themselves as children of Jacob, as the house of Jacob, the children of Israel. This is my way, God, my way of saying, you special people, you. Okay, well, let's go on. I'm running out of time, but we've got so much to talk about. Okay, so we have day 3. Mrs. Moses talking. Be ready on the 3rd day. Adonai, God is going to, and this is, God speaking. You shall be ready for the 3rd day. God is going to come down for all the people on Mount Sinai. What is God? So what's God's picture here? Okay, God's picture is, I want everybody to be ready. Okay, it's like I want to say this as an analogy. Okay, I'm talking to the bar mitzvah kid, and the bar mitzvah said, okay, 3 days before, you're going to make sure you have your suit. You're going to make sure you shower. You're going to make sure you're ready. You know your Parsha, everything. And on the 3rd day, Shabbos morning, you're going to come to shul, and you're going to go up to the Torah, and we're going to say all these things to you. And that's what's going to happen. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be beautiful. And of course, there's going to be, I'm going to be there, and it's going to be, God is fire and terrifying, which is, I think, the really most important part of this. But in my picture, I'm going to speak, you're going to be there, I'm going to speak, you're going to listen, and we're all going to kind of have this moment together, and then it's going to be over, and we'll go away, okay? That's what is intended, okay? Going to continue? All right. V'igbalta adam saviv lemor, you're going to make a boundary. V'shamru lachem alot bahar, do not touch it. It's holy, it's on fire, it's radioactive. And anyone who encroaches the zone is going to be put to death, because you cannot encroach the zone. And I can't go into that right now, but you know the idea. The idea is there are boundaries, and I don't care who you are, how pure you are. If you're not the select individual and you cross the boundary, it's over for you. And that happens elsewhere in the Torah. Loti gabo, the person who does that is going to be put to death, and you cannot touch that person. And the reason why you cannot touch that person is because by coming to the zone, the person has been sanctified in some way and is radioactive too. You need to mind these boundaries. Boundaries are really, really important, okay? Even if it's the person will be stoned, okay? So we're talking about the seriousness with which we have to take these boundaries. And so Moses comes down. This is the 2nd time he comes down. He sanctifies the people. He does what God says. And they wash their clothes. And then he says, this is Moses, be ready for 3 days. Do not touch a woman. And of course, I know, this has to offend women, but it obviously wasn't intended to offend anyone. It's basically saying, I'm going to be as blunt as possible. It says, nobody have sex. Don't even think about sex. Don't even touch a woman. And this is directed to men, but it could have easily been directed to women. In other words, don't have sex. Why don't have sex? Because I don't want your head to be mushy, okay? Because when you have sex, you are crazy, okay? So nobody touch anybody, okay? Nobody get involved with anybody. No sex, no nothing, no touching, no singing, no dancing, nothing. I want your total focus on me. You got that? Okay? And we could go to town on that, but let's not. 3rd day. The 3rd day, what happens? Baboker, it's the morning. Clarity, but not clarity. It's at the opening of the day. And what is going on? There's thunder, there's lightning, there's a thick cloud, the sound of a trumpet. We don't know where this trumpet is coming from, but it's a cloud trumpet sound light show. And the people see this, and what's their reaction? They start to tremble. Did God count on this? I'm going to say no. I'm going to close the share over saying, what did God think for that they weren't going to be scared? Here's and this is why I said we have to kind of purge out everything you've read here and think of it in God's terms, you ask that question, what's God's perspective here? God says, I want a moment with the people, but I'm God, and I am a consuming fire, okay? You cannot be close to me, all right? Fine. So get them ready, and I'm going to speak somehow, and they're going to listen. And so it happens, they're ready, they follow all the instructions. They probably don't have sex. And they're ready, and they see this billowing smoke from the mountain, probably a volcano, like a volcano, like what happened in Togo. A furnace, light, sound, trumpets blaring, and what would your response be? I'm terrified. And so they start, and they're terrified, and they tremble. The trembling means that they're unstable. Susie, question. Go ahead.
Mouse issues. So just to back up for a minute, the Al Tigshu Elisha, they're, in pagan societies, there are orgies involved with religious worship. And I think maybe, this is to counter that.
Good. Okay. And I'll leave it there. All right. All right. Let's go on. All right. So they're trembling. They don't know what to do. And so Moses wants to bring them close. He says, okay, everybody, come out of your bunks, come out of your tents. Let's go to as close as possible to the mountain. And then what happens? The mountain, Bahar Sinai Kulo, Ushan Kulo is mountain of smoke. God is now down there. It's happening. There's fire and there's smoke, like the smoke of a furnace. And the mountain is quaking now, okay? And the sound of the shofar is going forth in the whole world. Moses is speaking and God is answering, okay? So this scene is happening. We have the 3 days, they're ready. The people are terrified. It's happening. And Moses is speaking and God is answering. And God has come down. God is already on the top of the mountain. And God says to Moses, He says, come to the top of the mountain, and Moses comes up. And then what does God say? This is unbelievable. God says to Moses, Red, go down. Ha'ed ba'am. Speak to the people. Lest they defile, lest they cross over the boundary. I don't want them to die. Okay, so the first thing that God says to them is, wait a minute, Moses. Wait, something wrong is happening. Okay, they're supposed to be there, but they're unstable. God never took this into account, and I know we're entering into different territory. We say, God didn't take it into account. Reading the story, it's like God plans it this way, and the people are doing it, and the people are trembling, and that is dangerous. And God wants to protect the people. So he says, you know what, Moses, emergency, go back down. Tell them, do not cross over again. Do not. Because if they do, and if the people get too excited, or if they're too unstable, and they want to lurch like a crowd, they're going to die. Because the power here is overwhelming. That's what's going on here. And Moses says, and this is a great moment of Moses that we always overlook, which is Moses says, and God says, "V'gama kohanim, gama kohanim nigashim el Adonai yikadashu." I'm just going to, because the translation is not consistent here. I lost everything. I'm sorry. V'gama kohanim nigashim el Adonai yikadashu. Let them also be sanctified, lest I destroy them, I break through. Moses, Vayomer Moshe el Adonai, Moses says to God, wait a minute, Lo yuchal ha'am, you already told me that the people can't go up. Ki atai doti ba'enu, you told us this already. Hagbel et ahar v'kidashto, make the boundary of the mountain and be sanctified. And God says, Vayomer el Adonai, lech red, never mind, go down. V'alita ata v'aron, and when you come back up, come back with Aharon and with the priest, Va'am al Yersu, and lest not the people be destroyed. Vayered Moshe el ha'am vayomer alehem. And Moses goes down and he speaks to them. Now, this is complicated now. Here's the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments come. So what the puzzle is when and how did the Ten Commandments come out? And question, did the people even hear? The people were trembling. This is overwhelming for them. They're worried about their safety. And so the Ten Commandments come out. We don't know clearly. And this, when you have to read this clearly. Does God say this to the people directly? Or does Moses say this to the people? This is what God has said. It's not clear. Okay? I don't care. We got libraries of interpretation on this. Okay? That says, in the most mystical term, God spoke these words and the people heard. Blah, 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 blah. No, that's not what happens here. It's a mess. It's a pandemonium. The people are terrified. They do not hear the Ten Commandments. And they're trembling. And the Ten Commandments are coming out. They can't make out the sounds. They can't make out the words. They don't understand what's going on. I said the Ten Commandments. The 10 statements are coming out. And they don't know what's going on. And here are the 10 statements. Okay? I am the Lord. Do not, do not, do not, do not. And so here, V'chol ha'am ro'im et hakolot. I have your hands up. The people are seeing they're having this experience. They see the sounds, the torches, the sound of the shofar. The mountain is on fire. And the people, yanu, they are quaking themselves. They're terrified. They're moving. And here are the key words, vayamdu merachok. They move back. They're retreating already from the mountain. The words did not get to them. They are afraid. They do not hear. They're running for their lives. And they say to Moses, Vayomru el Moshe, daber ata imanu v'nishma. You talk to us, and we will listen. Al yedaber imanu Elohim penamut. If God talks to us, we're going to die. We can't take it. We can't take it. We didn't understand. We didn't hear anything. Okay? Do not be afraid. God was trying to test you to see if you could withstand this. So that you would at least have a sense of fear of God, reverence of God, so that you wouldn't sin. So the people went back. They stood further. And Moses went into the fog. That was where God was. Okay. So this is the picture here. Okay. I mean, religiously, we tell this in a different way. We're going to get up this week in shul, and we're going to recite the Ten Commandments. Everybody's going to stand there and pretend they're going to be at sign. They're silent. Everybody's silent and listening and trying to be intent, right? And here are the Ten Commandments, okay? And I'm saying, if I were directing this play here, okay, and if you really want to reenact what the people were doing, you'd run for the exits, okay? When we get up to say the Ten Commandments, this would be, a moment of terror in the synagogue. You run for the exits. What the rabbinic tradition has done, and that's a whole course, but this is what happened. They've taken the moment, and made that the moment, of connection. In a way, it's atonement for this. Okay, and I'm guilty of this too. Because 2 weeks ago, I said the people they go out of Egypt quietly and they assemble at Mount Sinai quietly, and that's true. That's true until the mountain erupts. Okay. When the mountain erupts, they're running for the exits. They don't want to stay there. And in running for the exits, they cannot hear what is said. So the Parsha ends with Moses is going to go back up, right? And there are other things that God says to Moses. That's mishpatim. We have a whole chapter coming up, and we're going to do this next week, where God relates all the things that are part of the covenant, and Moses writes it down, and then Moses tells this to the people, and they make a covenant to serve, and then Moses goes back up for 40 days, and that's when the golden calf happens. In other words, a close reading of this reveals a couple of very important points. God is terrifying. Not everyone can approach God. That God desperately desires a relationship. That the moment of Sinai is a moment of failure. The moment of Sinai, aside from everything that you've heard, the moment of love and all the stuff, like the covenanting and all the things that every single rabbi in history has said, it didn't happen that way, at least according to this. It's a moment of terror. It's a moment where people apprehend that God is too dangerous. Now, I'm going to leave, I know we're over, but I want to leave you with this point, which is the point which we'll come back to next time, which is that how does Moses see God in the first instance? Moses' first encounter with God is a fire, okay? And the fire is burning the bush. V'asneh enenu ukal. And the bush was not consumed. So Moses' experience of the fire is that it's not a consuming fire. Here on Sinai, the people's experience of the fire is that it's all-consuming. The vision of Moses, and here I'm borrowing from Yoram Hazony, and I think it's so compelling, is that how do you live with God? It's impossible. It's impossible. God is a consuming fire. God is so powerful that if you touch, you're going to get killed. The Moses' vision at the bush is no, it's possible. It's possible to have the experience of God within the fragile community, within the fragile individual, and not be consumed. That is what Torah is all about. The Torah is all about being able to have the connection with God without being terrified by it and without being consumed by it. God is the most terrifying force in the universe, but is also the life-giving force in the universe. Fire is terrifying, but when fire is tamed, it brings life and it's the essential element that makes life possible, okay? Harnesses energy, etc. Fire is the metaphor. The bush that is not consumed is the metaphor. The vision of Moses is that God, who is all-consuming, Esh Ochelet, can be within the people and not destroy them. Here, the people, it's too much. They need Moses, and they need to be differentiated. They don't hear a single word that God has said, and all of the romance about this moment has not yet taken place. Okay, Bob, you're waiting.
Yeah, I'm struck by the differences between the communication between God, Moses, and the people at the Sea of Reeds, where faced with the sea, faced with the Egyptians, they're told, go forward. Don't kill yourself, don't surrender, don't fight, don't pray. Here, they again meet up with God and Moses, and it's stop, look, listen, do, and sort of pay attention to those sacred zones and stuff. So I'm wondering if this also represents Moses' growth as a leader from where he was at the Sea of Reeds.
Absolutely. I think, I'd love to be able to kind of put on a graph, all of these points of contact and show, how, what, and ask this very question, which is, how are the people learning and how is Moses learning? And we're still at a very elementary level. Look, the people, start back at the beginning of the story again. 3 months, it's only 3 months, I'm thinking like 3 months ago, what was they doing? 3 months is nothing. They have not had the chance to really apprehend what their experience and what their existence is all about. Okay? And this is where I think God is learning too. We make the mistake of thinking, of superimposing a Western idea that God, has figured it all out, right? Clearly in the Torah, God has not figured it out. God is constantly failing. And the most the character in the Torah that we have to have the most sympathy for is God. God's trying, and then people felt all God wants to do is break through. I read the verses before in a very plaintive way. You shall be for me Yatem Tiuli Mamlechet Kohanim Begoy Kadosh. What do I want? I want it's not this is why the movie is so disconcerting, because thou shalt not, a big bass voice, thou shalt, God there's power, of course, but there's intimacy, right? Transcendence and immanent. I want this relationship with you. All I want to do is meet you. I can't meet the people because the people are just not capable of doing it. They're going to be destroyed. They don't understand. They don't have the wherewithal. And their experience, and this kind of counters our modern sense of our own self-confidence. We think that we can do anything, right? Any kid can do anything. Hey, you grow up and be anything you want. And the Torah is basically no, you can't. There are certain people that are like Moses. There are prophets that have certain capabilities, and there's the rest of us who are plumbers and lumberers. We can't. We're electricians. We're tradesmen, painters, etc. Ilana, go ahead.
And obviously 40 days later, or I don't know exactly, but 40 days later, they did show that they were not ready for this relationship by making the golden calf.
Absolutely. We have to ask ourselves why that happens in the story. And you touched on it, which is they're not ready. They're just not ready. They didn't hear. I would defend them by saying they didn't understand what was being said here. How could you understand? What we're saying here, and this, I say this a lot, religion is complicated. It's simple, but it's complicated, okay? It's simple to say to people, take 18 minutes before Shabbat, you light your candles, right? It's complicated to say why. It's simple to say, on Shabbos do this, this, and this, but, why? There's some sophistication that's demanded from you. It takes a while to learn things beyond the basic level, okay? And the people don't have that. And why would I expect them to have that? And here, this is God's, expectations and God's disappointments. The moment of Sinai, so here I'm reframing this in a way that I think is refreshing to me, which is, all of a sudden, I see this moment not as a great moment of climax, but a great moment of failure, okay? And how refreshing is it to see that God fails at this moment and that people don't get it, right? And that the truth of that is, to a certain extent, we still don't get it. Go ahead, Marlene.
Maybe it's just they don't get it yet. Later, they're going to say, Na'aseh v'nishma. We're going to do it, but we have to hear it first.
Okay. So that I think is the hope here, which is that we're going to try. We're going to try our best. Okay. To what extent that hope translates itself into action. Lana said they're gonna have it fails. They fail too. So the revelation moment is God wants it to be a certain way, and it isn't. The moment of covenanting, in which Moses slaughters and sprinkles all sorts of blood on them and it's a whole ceremony, and they make the agreement that's supposed to be a pinnacle moment, and then shortly later they have the golden calf. So there's a failure, and this pattern is the pattern. It goes on, and to a certain extent, it's imprinted itself on our life. We expect the other shoe to fall. We don't live in utopia, Jews. We're always, I don't want to make too much of a thing about last week, but we're all thinking, when's the next one going to happen? When we're preparing ourselves, we're thinking about this, and we're saying thank God it was this way. It could have been 100 times worse, and God forbid that it's going to be. But we in the back of our minds, we know that disaster can happen. Susie, go ahead.
Yeah, so what you're saying kind of goes in line with the Midrashim, or the Midrash that talks about how the people, so how much did the people hear? Was it the first diber, or because they said no, we can't take it? Moshe, you find out, then you tell us. So was it the letter? Was it just the letter Aleph? Was it the first diber?
So all of that, the Midrash, I think, captures that idea, which is that the people are terrified, and that it's one Midrash says that after the first word they fainted, and one says after the first letter they kind of said, "Look, I can't take it, can't take it." Okay, it's overwhelming, and so there's an idea here, and it's almost counter to the a modern idea of the intimacy. We want the intimacy with God. We want and we have a Hasidic notion, a mystical notion that God is sitting right here with us, and we're buddy buddies, right? And it's like the Bible idea is not God is not a buddy buddy here. God is like overwhelming power. You come even close, you'll get completely radiated. It's too powerful. Okay, so yeah, tradition, Jewish tradition, and 2,000 years of our thinking about these things mediates all of that in different experiences, and all of that is valuable. I mean, our personal religious experience is, we always say we're trying to recreate the Sinai. If I again, as I said, if I'm going to recreate Sinai, I'd have everyone bolting for the exits. That's what it is here. It's that overwhelmingly powerful. Okay, we have to leave it here. I'm so sorry. I know this requires a huge time, but good enough for us. Yeshua.